what does the lease code say? The RICS professional statement, code for leasing businesses premises, says a landlord's control over alterations should be no more restrictive than necessary to protect the value of the landlord's property. It goes on to say that a lease of a whole building shouldn't normally restrict internal non-structural alterations. A lease of premises within a multi-let building may require landlord's consent to internal non-structural alterations, but in either case, alterations which adversely affect the character, value, structural stability, etc. of the building may be prohibited. Generally speaking, it recommends that internal non-structural alterations should be permitted without any requirement for landlord's consent, unless there'll be an impact on services and systems in the wider building. So nothing to startle the horses really in what the lease code says. What does your license to alter say? Typical provisions: the tenant should supply the landlord with copies of all statutory permissions and approvals required. The appointment of any contractors by the tenant usually requires prior approval by the landlord. Typically, work should be begun within a specified time limit. There's provision as to the manner in which works are carried out, in compliance with applicable regulations, causing no nuisance to neighbours, in a good and workmanlike manner, that sort of thing. On completion, tenant to notify the landlord, take away all debris, rubbish, provide the landlord with all the appropriate documentation required, the health and safety file for the works and so forth. An obligation to reinstate the work at lease expiry. That may not always be the case, but it's very often there. And as I said, the agreement of any guarantor. So that might well be typical content. Now, removal of fixtures at the end of the term. Problems sometimes arise at lease expiry when leaving behind tenants' fixtures and chattels may be held to be a failure to give vacant possession. And that's particularly important where you've got a tenant who's trying to exercise a break option, which is conditional upon giving vacant possession, as they almost always are. Now, there have been several cases in recent years, Riverside Park and NHS Property Services being just one of them, where the exercise of a break option has failed because the tenant left behind tenants' fixtures and chattels. In that case, as the slide indicates, internal demountable partitioning, which the court decided were either chattels or tenants' fixtures, but in any event gave rise to a substantial impediment to the landlord's ability to enjoy possession of the property, and therefore a failure to give vacant possession.